Hi, this is Chantel Roberts. We will soon be interviewing a good friend of mine, Brenda, and unfortunately, we've tried several different times to get a good sound quality for her, and it just wasn't working. So please be patient with this interview. It may sound a little choppy, but we've done the best that we could with the technology that we have. Thank you. Welcome to the Insurance Suits Podcast, a bi-monthly podcast brought to you by AIMCO, discussing the issues and the people who are involved in insurance. The views expressed by the moderators and guests represent their own views and opinions, and not necessarily the views and opinions of AIMCO, Insurance Suits, or its advertisers. Hi, welcome to Insurance Suits. I am Chantel Roberts. Insurance Suits is a podcast brought to you by AIMCO, the American Association of Insurance Management Consultants. Amy is not able to be with us today. I think she has a mediation in Michigan or Indiana or something, but I have the great honor of introducing and interviewing one of my favorite people, Brenda. Oh my gosh, you got married. It's Brenda Wells-Dietel, something else. I mean, like, I have never met anybody who has 4 last names, basically. So
Okay.
do you want to introduce yourself? Because I obviously am a very bad friend. I don't know what
No, you're not a bad friend. My name was Brenda Powell Wells. Powell beat my maiden name. And I kept Wells after the divorce because I didn't want my son to have a different last name from me. And I've been Wells for so long. Everything in my career is under that name. So I have hyphenated, and I am now Brenda Powell Wells-Dietel.
Dietel, that's it. Dietel. Okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And congratulations.
You can just call me Brenda. It's really okay.
Yeah, of course. But we're very informal here on Insurance Suits. And so Amy and I really don't try or practice or anything like that, because we want to keep it kind of a conversational tone. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is how, of course, we know each other through the cannabis space. And this is airing on April the 15th. So happy 420. And and so I wanted to talk about cannabis and insurance, because a lot of times people feel that you can't have insurance for cannabis, or of course we still have a lot of issues with cannabis and insurance.
Well, you and I met in the cannabis space through, I believe, Melissa, right? Melissa Roeder?
Yes. Actually, for all our listeners, the way that this happened was we were all at DRI, the Defense Research Institute, which is the defense bar, and I stalked Brenda because she is a professor at East Carolina University. So I stalked her because I was a brand new expert witness, and I knew that attorneys like people who not only have the experience but also teach, because that means that you can teach to a jury. And of course, I don't have a doctorate or even a master's degree, so I stalked you and bothered you until you took pity on me and let me come talk to your class.
I loved you coming and talking to my class. They loved it too. And I had forgotten about that part, but yeah, juries do really need to be instructed by the witness. I just had a couple of interviews this week for a potential consulting expert witness work position, and I told him, I said that my job is to educate the jury. That's what I do. That's why I named my business risk education strategies, because I feel like everything I do as an expert is in some form or fashion education. Whether I'm educating my client or the jury or the judge. So, yeah, the teaching experience is good, and you did a great job at it.
Yeah. So let's talk about cannabis in the insurance space, because some of the things, and I do now have a gig as an adjunct professor, so yay me. And some of the things that I talk about with my students when we're going over like contracts, for example, as some of our attorney listeners will know, an insurance is a contract, an insurance policy is a contract, and you have to have a legal purpose. That's part of the issue of being a contract. And so I always get a debate with the students going like, can you insure insurance or cannabis, because the federal government says it's illegal. So what say you, Dr. Brenda?
Well, I guess there's the expert witness answer, and then there's my personal answer. Expert witness says, yeah, you can't insure something that's against public policy. You also have to realize that for there to be public policy, it has to be enforced. And the federal government is not enforcing its own policy. So I think you have at best a gray area. I mean, it's kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Don't do this, but okay, go ahead and do this. That's kind of what they've done, and it started under the Obama administration with the Ogden and Nash memos. And I don't know where those stand now. I know that Jeff Sessions repealed them, but still, we're letting these operations go on across the country. I have a theory about why it's not legal.
Why? Tell. Do
all
the beans.
Why they won't change it at the federal level.
Yes. Why?
And the last time I voiced this on a stage, someone went, well, there are always conspiracy theories. So
I love a good conspiracy theory.
I am convinced, I follow the money. Who stands to lose if cannabis becomes legal? Okay. Who's going to lose market share? And I can tell you exactly who is going to lose market share. Big pharma, big alcohol, and for-profit private prisons. Because for-profit private prisons, which is hard to say 3 times fast, are filled with non-violent offenders who simply possess cannabis. If we legalize cannabis, we have to let them out. We have to let them out of prison. We have to expunge their records. That would be the only fair thing to do. And so I'm sitting here going, okay, here's 3 industries that stand to lose. What are they doing in their defense? What are they doing to protect themselves? And it is a well-known fact that Big Pharma lobbies extensively in Washington. And they have the money to do it. And, Michael Moore, whether you're a Michael Moore fan or not, Michael Moore, when he did his health insurance video called Sicko, the documentary, he pointed out that, even Hillary Clinton was trying to reform Big Pharma until they paid her. And then she suddenly didn't care about reforming Big Pharma. So what I'm getting at is they seem, and I haven't done the research, maybe I will, but, I think if you look at the donors to these people who are keeping this from happening, I think you'd find who they are. I think if you The donations are public record. I'm surprised somebody hasn't done this already. But I would be willing to bet that those three industries are very well represented in our elected officials' coffers. And I have a friend who I will spare identifying him, but he is a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and he told me that I am right on that. He said that is exactly what's happening. So, the question is...
This episode of Insurance Suits is sponsored by the American Association of Insurance Management Consultants, or AMCO, a nonprofit trade association comprised of insurance and risk professionals ranging from actuarial, underwriting, acquisition and transactions, and adjuster, agent, and broker standards of care. Find out more at www.aaimco.com.
Why is it still illegal? And that, to me, is the answer. Because, you one by one, the states are legalizing it. So why are the feds going, well, gee, we just don't know enough about it yet? Or whatever their excuse.
It is interesting because I had heard or read an article that there was this supposition that the federal government would legalize it on the federal level once we came to that tipping point. Because if you look at when we made marijuana illegal back in the teens and the 20s, it was the 30 states, 33 states, once the 33 states or whatever made it illegal, that the federal government said, okay, we'll make it illegal. And then, so now we've got 33 states that have made it legal, at least if not medicinal and then adult use or whatever. And so I thought, okay, so now we should be hearing the federal government go, oh, okay. So it's interesting. I think it is quite true. If you follow the money, you can get there. The students always go back and forth, like, yes, you can do it, and no, you can't do it with the insurance aspect of it. But what I always think of is that you can insure it because the states who have made it legal are the ones who control the insurance companies and make these mandates and make these adjudications based on, every business has to have like a $2 million CGL policy or, whatever, which would encompass the dispensaries or the manufacturers or whatever. But the interesting part is, going back to the money, is that you have the insurance industry also in the federal government aspect with the safe banking or with the banking aspects. And so are you, quote unquote, laundering drug money?
Right. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking.
No, but I do see Ken. Hi, Ken. You're going to be famous. Woo!
Yeah, my dog was barking. I apologize if that interrupted what you were saying. I predicted that President Obama would legalize before he left office, and I was dead wrong. I predicted that it would become legal under President Trump, and I was dead wrong. So one thing I have learned is to stop making predictions. I don't want to be wrong anymore.
You would think if anything, when we had a House and a Senate and a president that were all together, all under one party, that's definitely when it would have happened. And that is not what has happened. And I get asked that question a lot. When do you think cannabis will be federally legal? Because if you think about it, I believe it's federally legal now in Mexico. I know it's federally legal in Canada. There are a couple of countries, I think Paraguay and Israel, that have it federally legal throughout their whole thing. And so there is now more research being done that we can see that this may not be the huge issue that some people are thinking,
Right.
increased crime, increased accidents, that sort of thing.
Well, I have a sign in my office on campus that says there are three kinds of lies. There's lies, damned lies, and statistics. It's quote by Mark Twain. And basically, if you want to do a study and you want to find a particular result, then you will. So you can, and I have a friend that watches nothing but Fox News.
Hmm.
And he's always telling me, well, on Fox News, they said this about cannabis, and they've said that about cannabis, and it's causing increased workers' comp claims, and it's causing this, and it's causing that. And when I go on to Fox News, I cannot find this information.
Right.
Anyway. So I don't know what information they're circulating. I'm a big believer that you should watch multiple news channels, and then somewhere in the middle lies the truth.
Exactly.
But, if you want to do a study that says marijuana is bad, you're going to find that result. You have to really watch the sources of these studies.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, tell me about all the horror stories coming out of Canada after they legalized. Tell me about them. Has anyone heard them? Because I haven't.
Right.
Canada's doing just fine. They're making lots of tax revenue off of selling cannabis, and they're not having problems. Here's one problem they're having: increased drug tourism. That is something, that's a real thing. Drug tourism. We have it in this country. People plan to go to Oregon, Washington State, just to smoke pot or to eat pot in edibles, whatever they choose to do. And people are going to Canada now for that reason. We are passing up a lot of opportunity in our economy by letting the black market, or the underground market, I prefer to call it, letting them run wild with it when we could be taxing the daylights out of it. But that's a problem they've run into in California, is the taxes are staying high, that the black market, underground market, is still thriving.
Okay, so I will say I do know the a bad part of it, because I did do a little research into Canada. And the issue is that, like the United States, the taxes on marijuana in Canada are very high. So it is still cheaper for people to go to the underground market and get their marijuana there. So, and I used to be a big proponent, and I had read this whole article and this study about it and all this kind of stuff. And I used to be a very big proponent of saying, let's legalize marijuana and just tax the bejesus out of it, so that we can give that to teachers and first responders and, drug rehab centers. And I mean, just like all of these places that we tend to skimp and save on, like education, and the people who go running into the fires because I'm running out, or the people who go running towards the bullets and the gunshots because I'm running out.
Right.
I'm a big chicken. Let's give them the money, because these guys get paid $26,000 a year to put their life on the line. Okay, so that's not enough. Anyway, point being, when I started reading this and saw that it was happening in California, and saw that this underground market was also happening in Colorado and those sorts of things, I thought, maybe we shouldn't tax the bejesus out of it like we have with tobacco and alcohol, or maybe we should just tax it the same, not tax the bejesus out of it, because alcohol and tobacco still have higher taxes than, like, I don't know, your soda or your food or,
Mhm.
whatever. So that is the one bad thing that I have seen come
Mhm.
out, is that the illegal market is still going on.
Yeah, that is a problem, and it is going to happen when you have these high taxes. But then you talk to Colorado, and since they legalized, they have brought in well over $1 billion in
Mm,
taxes. You can do a lot of good with $1 billion in taxes.
yes, you can. Yes, you
And
can.
um, I look at it as um, because the moral arguments against cannabis don't hold water for me.
Mm,
Okay, you have all this, the devil's lettuce. I just want to slap people. Okay, it is not the devil's lettuce. It is a plant,
yeah.
and what you are seeing is the difficulty in regulating plants.
So this brings up a good point. That I happen, and I have called it cannabis because this is the preferred term, but I tend to prefer the term marijuana. And I tend to get up on my high horse on this because it is a plant, and this goes back to insurance policies that are calling marijuana, quote, cannabis, end quote, and then they're defining cannabis as, quote, anything with THC from the cannabis plant, yada, yada, yada. And then they will put, they being the insurers, will put another endorsement in there saying, okay, we'll cover hemp or we'll cover CBD, but we won't cover cannabis, but they'll still use the same thing. Well, the thing is that hemp with the federal definition has 0.3% or less in dry weight of THC. So that is, quote, any. And attorneys will tell you words matter. And so I still tend to use the word marijuana because the plant is cannabis until we come up with a better definition. I don't mind using the word cannabis, but we need to come up with a better definition rather than, quote, anything with THC, end quote, because that also encompasses, which it truly is, it does encompass CBD and hemp, because yes, CBD and hemp is cannabis, but it's not marijuana. And if we need to, as an insurance industry, distinguish between these two things, we need to come up with a better definition. And I say this because, and I know that people are using the word cannabis, and then I'll get off my soapbox, because a lot of people feel that marijuana is a racial term and, has racial connotations to it. And it also has a very bad, those of us who are of a certain age remember Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign, and that marijuana is a gateway drug. And so we don't want to say the word marijuana, but cannabis is okay. So what are your opinions on that? We probably get into a little debate with me and my lexicon.
I honestly, I've never given it that much thought. I'm not that hung up on semantics. You can call it whatever you want to. I know what you mean. Um, but you look at every doctor I've ever known who would discuss cannabis with me says they'd rather their kids smoke pot, so to speak, or eat edibles or whatever, than drink alcohol. One time I had a physician friend of mine come in and speak to my classes when I was teaching in a previous life somewhere. And he gave this big talk about how much he spends on insurance and how he avoids lawsuits and all the things that were interesting. And he gets to the end and he starts going, now listen, kids, and these are college students now. If you're going to put anything in your body, you smoke pot. And I'm going,
Oh.
uh, I, I didn't ask you to come in here and say this. But he brought it up and he said, if my kids are going to put anything in their body to alter their consciousness, I want it to be cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
He said, because I don't want them drinking alcohol. It's bad for them. I don't want them using tobacco. It's bad for them. He said, if you've got to alter your consciousness, use that. And if you can really, most medical professionals don't want to talk about it.
Yes.
Because they want to go on record. But a lot of doctors feel that way.
So let's
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you can finish up, but I was going to say, let's talk about that because I have a point as to why the doctors don't do that. I have quoted it in a couple of articles that I've written, but finish up your story.
Oh, I'm just saying that, you know, the medical community seems to know the AMA, the American Medical Association, was against making marijuana illegal in the 1930s. It was made illegal in 1936 by the Marijuana Tax Act. That was the official, it had been phased out prior to that. But, you know, the medical community didn't want it illegal then. They have the New England Journal of Medicine has gone on record as saying it needs to be researched. There needs to be a change in its medical status. You know, the one thing that kills me, and I bring this up in every talk I give, cocaine is Schedule 2.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
I have a lot of people, one person in particular I can think of who really screwed their life up with cocaine. That's one of those things, I'll be honest, I have always been terrified of. I'm like, you know, I know people who used it and got into it, and, you know, I was, not me. I don't want any part of it. But why is that Schedule 2 and cannabis is Schedule 1?
Yeah, you know, and again, the conspiracy theory is that it was the paper companies and the cotton companies that made it also illegal, in addition to reefer madness and all that kind of stuff, because they didn't want us using hemp.
Right. And in particular, it was William Randolph Hearst, the publishing magnate. He had invested in much timber.
Mm-hmm.
It was the DuPont family. They had just invented nylon.
Right.
And they didn't want competition for nylon. So you're exactly right. Those were forces and against it. And I will always believe that's why it was made illegal, was for the hemp, not for the fact that it got people high.
So the AMA, what they say now is that doctors are not allowed to even recommend it because, as you know, since it's federally illegal, marijuana, that is, doctors cannot write a quote unquote prescription, even though that's what we use in our slang. I can't say the C word, the colloquial, I can't ever, whatever, you know what I mean? And so we got a script for it, but you technically get recommended, quote unquote, it. But yeah, so there's that with the AMA. And I think I had another point, but I don't remember what it was. So that's all right, though. I think this is a great conversation. I know what I was going to say too with the smoking of it. I have read articles about how people are now, doctors or scientists, I suppose, are coming back and saying smoking marijuana is just as bad as smoking tobacco. And I think that's more of the inhalation of things with your lungs and it killing the parts of the little nodes in your lungs and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Smoking, inhaling anything is generally probably not the best idea in the world. And then there's the other school of thought, well, you got to die with something. So, you know,
yeah, you know,
you might as well be high. I don't understand the illegality of a plant, because think about this: What if we found out tomorrow that you could smoke out, you could go out to the corn plant, get the husks off, roll them up, smoke them, and get high? Are you going to make corn illegal?
CMR Consulting proudly sponsors the video recording of insurance suits. You now have a choice of watching or listening to the podcast. Go to YouTube and search for Chantel Roberts or CMR Consulting.
You know, it doesn't, making something that grows in the ground, that is natural, that it's difficult to regulate because it's only going to take, just like we're seeing with Delta 8 and Delta 10, one little tweak in the laboratory and we're not under the regulations anymore.
Right. And I think they figured that out when they passed these rules, the saying, okay, 0.3%, and actually what it said was 0.3% dry weight THC Delta 9.
Yeah, Delta 9.
Delta 9 is actually what the rule is. And so that's why when Delta 10 came through and Delta 8 came through, and, we're probably in 5 years going to discover Delta 1,500,000, or, whatever. And again, what's fun, I think, about this sphere and insurance is that real life moves a lot faster than legal issues and insurance. We can't keep up with writing a endorsement or a policy, and the law, we were just thinking it was or it was Delta 9, and then all of a sudden the scientists go, well, looky here, we did, surprise, we did, discoveries and all of this kind of stuff, and then there's some clever person going like, oh, loophole. So yeah. Hey, if listeners were to take away one nugget from your interview today, what would that be?
Question authority. I mean, I know that's not an original thought, but it's just, I think about my dad. He'll be 90 this year, next month in May.
Happy birthday!
And he has come full circle on, being an ardent anti-pot smoker, never tried it, hates it, thinks it's evil, to let's legalize it. I mean, why is it still illegal? What turned the tide for him was seeing those children that needed cannabis or cannabis derivatives to control seizures. That is a real issue that people need to be questioning, is why are we keeping children from their medication?
Right. And that's actually what started this whole thing, was the CBD and the children with the seizures and that sort of thing.
And it's changed a lot of people's minds, and it's changed a lot of people's hearts. There are people who smoke pot to get high, and then they want to call it medicine. Well, it's not medicine if you're just smoking it to get high. There are a lot of people who use cannabis or marijuana, whatever you call it. They use it for medicinal reasons, and it helps. It helps with anxiety. It helps with PTSD. It helps with a tremendous number of mental and physical ailments. And so why would anybody want to keep people suffering from those things? Why would you want to keep them from their medicine?
Right.
I mean, what good are you doing society if you're keeping other people from getting the medicine that they need? So, I have not taken on this from an advocacy standpoint because I don't want my audiences to, feel that I'm trying to convince them of something, because I'm not. I'm trying to state, here are the facts. Take from them what you will. I did actually have one presentation I did with somebody, and they wrote that was the most unbiased presentation.
They said it was unbiased or biased?
It was the most biased, unbiased Because we had
Oh,
said
oh,
we're going
wow.
to be unbiased, and
Right.
apparently we came across a different
Very
way. So,
biased. Oh.
but the most biased, unbiased presentation I've ever heard.
Well,
Um, but
people, people
you
are
know,
hard. Yeah.
and I know for certain religions, mind-altering substances are not okay. You know, the Baptists don't believe in drinking, but other religions do believe in drinking. And you know, my attitude on that is, you know, if you don't believe in drinking, then my advice to you is not to drink. And
Right.
I feel that way about cannabis too. If you're against cannabis, then don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to hold a gun to your head and go, here, smoke this. Uh, so don't do it. But you know, how would you feel if whatever pill it is you take every day, or whatever tincture or whatever medication you're on, how would you feel if somebody said, "Oh, that's illegal. You can't have that. That's against public policy." Why? Because the big pharmaceutical companies told us it was. You know, I think that would be an interesting study to see how many of because let me tell you something that my lobbyist friend told me that I meant to share. The Senate has a committee that decides what goes to the floor to vote, to be voted on. The Senate, I can't remember the name of the committee, but basically he said they cannot get a simple majority in there on whether or not to bring the Safe Banking Act to the Senate floor. Why? Ask yourself why.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're not even talking about legalizing cannabis. We're talking about just making it safe for banks to do business with the cannabis industry and put an end, or at least curtail some of the crime related with cash-based business. And yet, you can't get a simple majority that will agree to that. I won't talk to those 24 people and ask them why, because I guarantee you their answer is going to be, well, we don't know enough. There's not enough research. No, that's not why.
Mm-hmm.
I'm convinced that it's not why they don't want to legalize. I think somebody's telling them not to. And if that makes me a crazy conspiracy theorist, I'll wear that title proudly. But I do think people, with regards to this issue, should try to keep an open mind, just like you should keep an open mind about everything.
I do remember what I wanted to ask you,
Okay.
and it was about we or you had done a cannabis industry claims survey. And did you want to plug that, or is it still going? Is it closed, or?
We need to work on that. But just as I suspected, you know, everybody was wanting me to do it. And the thing that I was concerned about was the people fill it out.
Mm-hmm.
And no, they won't. I think the last time I looked, we had 9 responses. You can't study that. So
No.
I think the committee that was working on it, when last we spoke, I was supposed to write an article and try to publicize it in the magazine. But then, as you know, and the audience can't tell, I'm recovering from surgery, so I fell like almost a month ago. Well, I tore my hamstring, and that knocked me over. So I'm not at my best right now, and I'm not caught up on work. But we do need to publicize that. We do need to get it out. If anybody watching is interested in learning more about it, you can email me at Brenda at RiskEd Strategies, RISKED strategies.com.
Great. And I'm trying to find if there's a website right now for that, in case they wanted to look it up, but I can't find it right off the top of my head.
There is a website, but I don't have it handy. I have to look it up.
Yeah. Okay. So for those of you listening and watching, I'll put it up when I put up Brenda's information as well. Okay, Brenda. So you've already said how they can contact you. Is there anything else you'd like to let people know about? Like, you got anything coming up besides sitting and letting your hamstring heal?
I took on some new administrative roles at work in the last year, and so I am cutting back on my travel, I'm cutting back on my speaking, um, just because I just physically cannot be in all the places I need to be to keep doing what I've been doing. So I'm speaking less and traveling less. But now I'm doing that because of my hamstring. So I'm stuck here for another 5 weeks, just recuperating.
Oh, no. Well, thank you so much
Oh, sure.
for
Thank you for having me.
to talk with us. And this wraps up another Insurance Suits podcast. I'm Chantel Roberts. Unfortunately, Amy Johnson couldn't be here today, but we did have a terrific guest, Brenda. And we're going to be back in 2 weeks. We will be talking about the transition into being an expert, what it takes, and that sort of thing. So please be sure to like, follow, subscribe to our podcast on your favorite distribution channel and give us a review, preferably a 5-star one. If you need insurance consultants or expert witnesses, go to aimco.com, www.aimco.com. Or if you are a consultant or an expert witness, go to our page to learn more about us. We would love to have you. Thanks.
Thank you.